Tuia i runga, tuia i raro, tuia te here tāngata i a nuku ārangi. Kia horehia te kura, e kura nui, e kura roa, e kura takatū mai i a rongo taketake. Ka rongo te pō, ka rongo te ao, tau mai te mauri. Ka heke iho mai te rongo mai whenua. Whakatupu ānuku, whakatupu ārangi, whakatupu ki te tini orongo, kia uua na whakatupuranga. He rau pā no rongo, he rau I no rongo. Ka waka eke te aukai kia tīna, ka waka eke te aukai kia uru ora, kia tau mai te Rongomau. Haumi e, hui e, taiki. Tēnā koutou, nā me I kia koutou katoa, hākua wakarongo mai nei ki tēnei tō tātou waanga o te pō, ki te Rongomau. Nei rā nā me I mai o a kia koutou, I runga I te aoatanga o tēnei wiki, I runga I te aoatanga o tēnei wā. Nō reira kia koutou kua tai ki tō tātou kāinga noo, ki o koutou kāinga noo tēnā koutou, a tēnā koutou, a tēnā tātou katoa. He me I kau atu uki ki nā kai Wakawa, ngari ki te korimako o Taranaki, tēnā koutou mo tēnei waanga, tai atu ki a koutou nā iwi, uri rauna te maunga tito e a Taranaki, a tēnā koutou, a tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. A ka uri tēnei. Hey everybody, how are you going? I'm hoping that your week has been a very eventful one, given that we've all moved from one level to another. We're now all in level 2. And our special mihi to all of our whānau still in Noo Aumaru. Level 4, all of our whānau living in Tāmaki Makaurau, tēnā koutou. Our hearts and our aroha are with you at this time. And to all our whānau who are moving back into the normalities of their lives, we're hoping that this transitional time is one in which you're taking some time out for yourself. And so tonight, we have got a bit of a special show for you, and we'll do some more introductions and lay out the hōtaka of our evening. But before we do, we thought it would be really lovely if you're sitting on your couch or wherever you are, if you're at your kitchen table or with whānau, we thought we'd start with a pū-aio session with Kahurangi, and I'm just really going to hand it over to you, Kahurangi, and kei a koe te wā. Tēnā koe.
Okay, what I'll get you to do now is, however it may be that you're sitting, just ensure that your sit bones are connected with your seat. So give yourself a bit of a shuffle in your seat. If you do have your feet on the floor, see if you can get them flat to the floor, and they're directly underneath your knees, and your knees are in line with your hips. So that's just giving us a really good start, seated position to start moving through our core. So when I talk about our core, we're going to start activating through our puku area. So drawing in the petal, just noticing your petal and then drawing that back towards the spine. Lovely. And then like we did last week, we're taking a breath in, rolling our shoulders up. And as we breathe out, slowly draw those shoulders down. And again, breathing in, shoulders are coming up. And releasing the breath on the shoulders down. And again, if you would like to close your eyes, rolling up, breath is in, and rolling down, breath is out. And taking 2 more of these in your own time. Beautiful. Allowing those shoulders to relax away from the ears. Still keeping the petal active by drawing it still in towards the spine. I'm going to clasp our hands in front of us. Draw away towards the front. And just feel that stretch between each shoulder blade. And then here again, we're going to start curving. I'll just turn to the side. You can see what my back is doing. So here, I'm starting to curve, and then just allow the forehead to drop and look between the legs. Beautiful. And then coming up, looking up, bringing the head up. Breath is in, stretching up those arms up to the ceiling. And I'll just turn, you stay there. And let go of those fingers and just loosely let the hands fall. And again, roll those shoulders, get your center back, activate that core again, pull that petal in towards the spine. And again, clasping those fingers, push away. Good. Okay, so here you're being empty of breath. So let the breath go. Breathing in, you're stretching up. And on a breath out, you're letting those arms go. Breathing in, rolling those shoulders. Breathing out, let the shoulders fall. Be mindful of what your petal is doing. And again, linking those fingers. We're activating the whole of the back here. Press away and find a bit more definition here by pressing away through the wrist. Letting that breath go before we move into our next posture. And then on a breath in, we're stretching up. And breath is out, letting go. Rolling those shoulders to breathe in. Letting the shoulders go to breathe out. Bring your mind back to your petal again. And we'll do that sequence one more time. Linking those fingers, pushing away through the wrist. Just feeling those whole the shoulders really opening up. So breath is in, stretching up. Breath is going out as you let it go. Breath is in, rolling up. And breath is out as you're rolling down. And again, mind to the petal, draw it to the spine. Allowing those hands to fall loosely at your side. Taking one hand to the opposite shoulder. Gently push it down. As you do, drop your head the opposite way. Feeling that stretch there through the neck. Letting the breath be soft here. But in your own rhythm, in your own pace, is your own breath. Allow the hand to fall away. Allow the head to slowly come up and roll. Doing that breath with it and out. Bringing mind to the petal again. Keep that petal drawn to the spine and taking the other hand to the opposite shoulder. A gentle press down of the hand on the shoulder and allow the head to fall the opposite way. Oh, beautiful. And here again, you're breathing in your own rhythm. And gently releasing the hand, releasing the head to come upright. And again, rolling the shoulders, breath is in, breath is out, rolling down. And kia ora. Whenui tēnā. Ko Taranaki tūturu me Te Atiawa o Kuiwi. Kei mga kauiti ki Tukurangi toku papakainga. Te roto e te po o te rawa. O Kahurangi Bailiangi ai. Kia ora.
Kerry.
Kia ora Kahurangi, thank you for that, it was lovely. Ko Taranaki tūturu te iwi, ko Kerry Walsh tako ingoa, and I'm living in Opanaki. Kia ora.
Ariana.
Kia ora. Ko ngā rauru ki tahi ko ngā te ronui ko ngā rohine o kuiwi. Ko Ariana Hurunui-Neil, taku ingoa. And I'm in Waitara. So kia ora and kia ora Kahurangi. That was a beautiful way to begin our hui tonight. Kia ora, Rochelle. Aye.
Oh, kia ora mai tātou, kia ora Ariana, nam hi aroha kia koutou, ko waio e mokopuna o te kahu maunga, ki te taha o tōku taranaki, ko ngā rauri ki tahi, ngā ruanui, Ngāti Ruruiti, and rawa ko Aotearoa nui a Paparangi te iwi, ko Rochelle taku ingoa. Kia ora.
Kia ora mai, koutou katoa nā waine, kai raro i tēnei tō tātou tuanui o Te Rongomau. A tēnā koe Kahurangi, he mea pai tērā kia tau mai tōku nei Māori, engari kia oho oki tōku nei tinana no reira ki a koe e te tuakana tēnā koe. Ko ai tēnei uri e tuake, o e noho ana i tēnei wā, a he uri tēnei no Taranaki tūturu. No Ngāti Tamarango, no Ngāti Aumi ara, ko Rimopiko, tōku nei papakainga, tōku nei pā. Tai atu ki te rātu ta anōku, e uri tēnei no Ngāti Aupoto, engari no te paipau te raukura, kaipari aka. No reira, he hononga tēnei, oki ki te atiawa tai atu ki ngā rauru, Ngāti Ruaiti, Ngāti Ruanui uki. Engari, mo i ana mātou, te onunga tai ki wainganui a tātou. No reira, tēnā koutou, tēnei pā arakeke. So just wanted to, for those of you watching, hopefully that was really helpful to kind of just get you centered for your evening, and maybe to have worked and identified as Kahurangi was moving through the breath work, particularly using breath and movement, that you were able to kind of locate or isolate maybe where you were holding a bit of tension, because sometimes it sneaks up on us. Like today, I've been out in my mara. It's just been the day to get out in my mara, and I just so needed all of those shoulder rolls and those stretches, because I've been digging and weeding and doing all sorts in my mara. So this all-koro day has certainly delivered the goods for us down here, closer to Te Wanganui Ātara. But for those of you, wherever you're listening from, hopefully you at least got some opportunity to either go outside or to look outside in your backyard, or maybe to even go for a hikoi in your backyard somewhere. Wherever you are, we hope that you're certainly tuning in and able to take some of the benefits of tonight's segment, or tonight's show. So as you know, Te Rongomau is all about a state of being, and so one of the things that we're wanting to encourage people to do is to become more attuned to understanding what that means for them, to certainly become more attuned to utilising all of your senses, every single one of them, in your daily life, and to come to this place and understand, one, when we're in a state of maurito, when our mauri is feeling settled and it's feeling, chilled and vibed, and it's all kind of, it's all got the good things going on. But also in knowing that state, we also understand when we're not. And so understanding when we're not is a really good way to self-monitor, self-care, and do what we need to do to manage ourselves. And this is kind of what the show's really about. It's about sharing some real stories that all of us have experienced, and also to share the rongoā journey that we, each of us have taken in terms of the kaupapa that we're sharing on this show. So I'm going to get into our kaupapa ake. So the kaupapa o te pōnei is called Te PIRINGA ta'i. And really it's about those close connected relationships that we have. And there's a bit of a play on the words. So when I think about tahi, I think of the essence or the energy of those kupu. Because inside of tahi for me is two kind of energy centers. One is the tā, which is the tāne, te ira tāne, and ko te hi, ko te ira ira wahine, ko te ira hine tera. So when we think about tahi, it's not just about oneness, it's not just about doing things by yourself, it's actually looking at the whole part of yourself, both because we all carry it, a female essence and a male essence in ourselves. And we all, whether we're female or male in gender, we have both of those elements coming to the fore. So part of tonight's kōrero is about that duality. And so we know in our creation narratives and our creation stories, right from the beginning of time, there's always been this balance of tāne and wahine. There's always been this tahi energy, this energy of duality going on. And so tonight we're going to be sharing some of those narratives, some stories, and talking a little bit about how these kinds of narratives have shaped our understandings of the different relationships we have, whether it's a relationship with oneself, because that often is one of the most difficult ones. You know, it's the person that you wake up to every morning. And so, you know, we might be sharing some stories about our personal journeys of that. It might be the close relationships inside of our whānau pito, so those whānau kōrero that we might want to be sharing tonight. And it could be kaupapa whānau, so all of those whānau that are kind of influencing our daily lives that we hang in spaces with, whether they're whānau, whakapapa whānau, or whether they're friends of ours or socially connected to ourselves. There's so many relationships we could explore tonight, but I know the wahine have certainly kind of thought about it in terms of their own personal stories and their own journeys with Rongoā, and they want to kind of share some of those narratives tonight. So, okay, so I'm gonna I need to mention before we move on, because this will keep you riveted to your seat in this show. We got a special guest coming up later on in the show, girls? We've got the honour and the privilege of Jerome Kavanagh, who's given us some of his time, and he will be coming in to share with us some pūrākau, some pūkōrero about his knowledge and his wisdom around taonga pūoro. And so he'll be sharing some of those narratives, and it's all in relation to our kaupapa ake. And then he's going to treat us a little bit with an Oro Ātua offering. So, you know, don't go anywhere. That's all I can say, is because, you know, if you want a treat for your Saturday night, then stick around, because he's going to come and join us in the studio a bit later after we've shared this kōrero. Hapai, just needed to do that. Sorry, aroha mai whānau. Okay, so tonight's kōrero is about exploring those different narratives that we all have. That's either been imprinted in our whakapapa, because sometimes we've picked up stories that relate specifically to our DNA, right? Or it could be stories that we've adopted or over our journey of life that we've kind of learnt some through experience and pick those up. And sometimes those experiences or those narratives of relationships, they can send us either on a really amazing journey and positive pathway, or sometimes they might send us down a different path, which can be challenging, can be confusing, can be all those things that while we're in it we might think it's the negative, but actually it's there to teach us something. So we're going to have the full spectrum tonight in terms of looking at our relationships of the whole self. So I'm just going to open up this question to our kai kōrero, our panel. So in terms of our first question, can you share with the listeners your understanding of the wahine and tāne relationships that you want to talk about, and particularly through your own rongoā lens, so the kind of experiences you've had? So I'm going to touch you first, Rochelle. So just to kind of say, if you want to kind of come in and share your understanding of this kaupapa of wahine and tāne relationships. Kai a koe te wā.
Oh, kia ora, Shar. Yes, so if we're going to be looking at narratives, I think there's a comparison of narratives as well. And so we discussed this, how we're going to look at it through the Rongoā lens. And as I said last week, so Olive Bullock is my kuia, and our Rongoā, our ware Rongoā is called Te Kōpere. And if we are to engage in the Rongoā, we actually engage all of our senses. So why am I saying this? This is because this interaction is between the divine masculine and the divine feminine, Papatua Nuku and Sky Father Rangi. And we sit in between. And even though we're in Te Ao Marama, the world of light, we sit in the space of Papatua Rangi. So we sit in this space. And so when my kuia came up with the idea to join a group, to join a rōpū, she sat with the kaumātua, and they sat in hikoi moimoia, which is it's more than a meditation. It's like a matakiti. It's actually where they would do like a medium. And so it's not the same as when you go into, I had a wairua experience, or I had a hikoi moimoia. This is based in tikanga, sitting with the elders and actually hearing the kōrero from the tūpuna. So it's a very different space, which if we have another time, we'll talk about that matakiti side. So in that kōrero, they were given the name Te Kōpere to use, and for the Rongoā. And the reason that came forth from our tūpuna to use the name Te Kōpere was because, number one, we aren't the Ātua. So the Ātua is uenuku of the rainbow. And Nana would say, we just aren't that good, So it was about humbling ourselves. It was about recognizing that we need to be humble. So uenuku is the Ātua of the rainbow. But at first he was a man, and that's a kōrero I'm going to give. But he wasn't always an Ātua. He was a man. So in the rainbow, you've got uenuku, and you've got a male part to the rainbow, and you have a female part to the rainbow. And the male part is called kahukura, and the female part is called tuahiorangi. And in the middle is the arch, and that is where Te Kōpere is. Te Kōpere sits in the bow of uenuku and transcends a vibration out. So Te Kōpere sends a vibration out. It's like the reflection of the rainbow, the reflection between the male and the female side of the rainbow. It's the mauri, it's the āhuatanga of the rainbow, and it represents both male and female. And so when we are doing our rongoā, we use ngā tai o te uenuku. So we use the different colours, and we also use our vibration. And so we use the harmonics and sound. And we talked about sound last week, and we talked about music last week. And so Te Kōpere incorporates all of those, but at the same time humbling ourselves that we aren't the Ātua, that we actually respond of them, and that it comes through them. Yeah. So, but I'll talk about that kōrero later when I reflect on Tāne about uenuku. Ka pai? Nā mihi, yeah.
Kahurangi.
Oh, wow, that was incredible, Rochelle. Loved it. So tonight I was going to talk about whakapapa, particularly mine, of course, and how in my whānau we tend to follow our father's kōrero. So it will be either my dad or my mum. Our kōrero is taken from the dads. But tonight I just wanted to share a bit more about how my mum's line. So, and through that, it took me all the way to France in 1530. And in one of those lines there, I discovered that 3 generations of women had become known So that sort of sparked a deeper curiosity in me as to why their children were listed in this whakapapa line. The husbands were all named, but the mothers weren't. So that was really interesting to me. I did a bit more digging and also found that a couple of documents which alluded to the witch trials in France prior to 1530. So there's that whole loss of practices and knowledge that have been taken from our whānau as we've become more and more. So I just wanted to go into that sort of kōrero. Kia ora.
Kia ora ka urangi, nā me iki a koe. Tai atu ki a koe Kerry.
Kia ora koutou. I wanted to talk tonight about the connection or disconnection to whānau and an experience that I had growing up with the breakdown of my whānau and looking Māori and having a Māori name, but not being brought up in a Māori household, and the disconnection that that I had with my wider whānau, my iwi, my hapu and marae, and how it affected my hauora and what I've been able to do to help enhance that. And who knows, there might be other people out there that have had that same experience that, you know, on that journey. So ngā mihi will talk later about some of the things that we can do, maybe. Thank
Kia
you.
ora Kerry. Kia ora for being, for sharing your nākau kōrero. Ki a koe Ariana.
Kia ora, Kerry. I can relate to what you're saying. So kia ora. So when this topic came up, I think what stood strong for me was around self-love and the sacredness of relationships, and how we can embody some of those elements that will then lead to really powerful healing. So if you're listening, last week I had spoken about boundaries, and I think when it comes to the kōrero between kane and wahine, there's balance. So it's about finding that balance and holding boundaries for yourself, and how we can do that in this crazy hectic world, because relationships are something we didn't learn in school anyway, and it's definitely a journey. So I look forward to that open kōrero that we'll have later on. So kia ora.
Kia ora koutou. So for those of you that are listening, you're hearing, you know, one of the things about this particular show is when we do this mahi of Rongoā, it isn't about being free of impediments or challenges. Like Rochelle kind of said, we're not atua, we're tangata. And part of our desire to share such personal kōrero is to show you that this is the reality of our mahi, is that we have to be pono and tika. We have to be pono and tika to who we are, but also to our wakapapa. And a lot of the lessons that we've had in life are lessons which have kind of supported us to seek out the rongoā, to seek out a rongoā pathway that can support us to navigate. And often relationships are rocky kind of crevices sometimes, and other times you're on the top of the maunga. And you can see really, really clearly. So relationships are such a personal thing that we couldn't not personalize the kaupapa tonight, so that you're receiving kind of real kōrero. So while you were talking, and thinking about this kōrero of narratives and how they shape our thoughts and our thinking around the relationships we have, with ourselves, with our whānau, with our communities, I couldn't help but think about Te Apina. So Te Apina was the tohunga that I learned from, Te Apina Riwaka no Ngā Te Rere Au. And I just remember the first rongoā she ever allowed us to kind of have time with was Kawakawa. And I know it's quite a prevalent rongoā everywhere. People know about it, but that's not how she taught it. And, she taught it, she made us have to actually smell, touch, feel, do all of the senses of Kawakawa. And she asked us to be in those states and then to share what we were learning from those rangatira plants, from those tupuna plants. And one of the things that I always will remember that she kind of said to us was that, Kawakawa carries the mauri of aroha. And so that's why it's such a common kind of a rongoā, because, we all need aroha. We all need aroha. And so I think about, where unconditional care and regard and love sits inside of our relationships. That's what that rongoā rākau teaches me, is to come back to my nākau and to make sure that it's pure and it's whole and that it's well and that it's clear, and that anybody that I have that relationship with, they too will receive the mauri of aroha if I'm truly in that space and in that state. And then as I kind of journeyed along this rongoā haerenga, I was fortunate to learn more about the whakapapa of Kawakawa. And this particularly comes through Papa Oepa Delamere's lineage. So this is where this particular whakapapa kōrero comes from. And it's important to know these. Like, if people are telling you stories about particular rongoā rākau or anything, actually, it's really important to go, where did you learn that? Or how do you know that? Because we're very honourable of whakapapa, eh? That's one of the things in our tikanga, is that we always want to know the whakapapa of something or someone and the connection too. And so it's no different than the ma'i of rongoā. We always kind of want to know the whakapapa. And so I've learnt this through those practitioners of romi who have done the wānanga with Papa Oepa, and they talked to me a little bit about this, and it's such a beautiful kōrero, I can't help but share it, that when Tāne, ascended na rangi tū ki te tihi o Manono to the place and where the kete of knowledge were sitting, where ngā kete o te mātauranga were sitting, o te wānanga were sitting. One of the kete that was gifted to or given to Tāne from Io held a seed, and the seed it held was the seed of Kawakawa. And that as he descended down, Io had said, you must plant this on your mother, on Papa Tuanuku, to cover her, to protect her, to heal her, because she has been separated from your father, from Ranginui, and kei te moke tonu aia. Okay, she's sad, and this will help her. This plant will help to heal her. And so when I think about that, I think about all of the relationships, One, that this is a sacred rongoā that comes from Io, and that relationship to the source is really important. And I'm not saying who the source is, but I'm just saying our relationship to the source is really important. That there is always the selfless act that you will do something for somebody else. And in particular, in this relationship, a son to a mother. And we think about those parental relationships, daughters to fathers, sons to mothers, and all of that in between, and what you would do for those relationships. And so I think about that, bringing down the seed for his mother to heal his mother. And that role, you know, what an honourable role that is. And Cheryl talked about being humble, being humble in our mai. And so the humility that takes to bring that gift to your mother or your parent. And the whole idea is that, you know, we have this desire and this want and this need to ensure that she's well. You know, that's just such a beautiful kōrero. Like, you know, I'm sorry, I'm so there. But that's just, you know, those narratives, they're not just, you know, I get a little bit kind of set off balance, I'll say, when people say they're myths and legends and they don't mean anything, when in actual fact that we whakapapa to these. Okay, we whakapapa to these narratives. They're our narratives. They tell us of our creation and they help us to make sense of our world. That's why they were handed down. Heke iho, heke iho. And so that's why narratives are important, because they're handed down and we have to make sense of them. And part of our navigating this pathway or this journey of relationships is to make sense of what those are for us in this lifetime. So I'm going to move into our question 2. I hope that was useful, whānau, because, you know, it is all of these kind of kōrero that's being laid are big kōrero. Okay, and they're not an hour-long show, to be honest. But we are touching on elements that I think you can reflect on. That's what we want you to do, is to reflect on the stories that have been shared. We don't need you to fix us up. We're all good. And so that's the other thing, is when you're listening, you don't need to worry about that. We're all good. But you can think about if it brings something up for you, and listen into the kōrero that whānau are laying, that there might be some things or some approaches or some ways that you might be able to work through some things if you're going through this at the moment. And or to let you know that there's a rongoā way to kind of deal with these things. So question number 2, coming at you, Shell, is in terms of the story you started to share about uenuku and te kōpere. Can you talk to us a little bit more about how you've utilised that, particularly the rongoā that you've used, in terms of supporting relationships, whether they're tāne, wahine or both? Kei a koe. You're muted, hun.
Oh, kia ora. Can't you lip read? Anyway, so Nan had her rongoā whare, Parihaunuku, and that is the name of her mother. Okay, so she called her whare Parihaunuku. And back in the day, sort of early 2000s, when I was just quite young, you know, and my nan was doing the program through the Taranaki Prison and Te Ihi too, with Auntie Te Wai, Hohaia. And so the tāne would come down to Nukumaru and spend time with us for weeks, and they would do rongoā. And it was my first experience working with tāne with rongoā, and especially tāne that were incarcerated and inside our whare. And it was just absolutely incredible. And I can't begin to tell you the mauri that was shifted from mauri mate, mauri moi, all the way through to noho, oho, and tau. And what I found was, because what my grandmother instilled in me was all tāne are my brothers, you know, that all people are my whānau and all wahine are my sisters. And so I was brought up to look at everyone quite differently. And so, and especially because we work with particularly miri and ruminomi, because I work with people's bodies, their tinana, Nana had to teach me over years how to work with the tinana and not sexualize a tinana, and work in an appropriate respectful way when in the state of rongo. So when you're doing rongoā, there is, or there shouldn't be, the tikanga is very protective, there shouldn't be any sexualization in rongoā. So we acknowledge and we pay homage to ngā tāne and ngā wahine in a really respectful relationship. Having said that, there is rongoā in sex and in lovemaking. So Nana would do these classes and not with the whānau from Taranaki prison, but when we were doing other classes, and we would make all these beautiful pani and all these beautiful oils, and then Nana would say, "Now go home and make love." Go home and make love, and everyone would start laughing, but she really meant it. She really meant that, go home and make love, and because she was she had 9 kids, and she loved lots of mokopuna, and she was very open about that sort of thing. And I think, unfortunately, because of colonization and then the introduction, and I'm not going to disrespect Christianity or anything like that. I believe, Jesus and Buddha and Maui, they're all brothers and sisters. But I think through this this concept of shame, we had this disconnect with tānetanga and wahinetanga. And I believe that we had a healthy sexuality prior to colonization, and we understood the natural rhythms of a woman's body. Men understood the rhythms of their body. We knew when it was time to get pregnant. We knew when it was time that we would be hapu. When we were hapu, we were in a state of tapu. And we talked about this the other week, Shah, that my nana was born in Ōkaiowa, and her father, Rangi Phillips, was actually the one that assisted the birth with his wahine, his wife, my kuia Parihaunuku, and he delivered all of the babies. And there was this connection between Nani Pare and Kahurangi in that bonding moment of completely trusting him to help her guide their pepe into life. So you can imagine the relationship and the connection that they had for each other, because they're a full reliance of each other, and the respect that goes into it and the trust that goes into it. And then can you imagine then giving birth? She was born in August. It was freezing in Ōkaiowa, in Taranaki, in the shed. She liked to glam it up and say, just like Jesus in the manger. But, she was buried in a shed. She was, born in the shed. And so what happened is, imagine then the relationship between the father and the pepe, the father and the baby, those relationships and those connections. And that's how I see tānetanga and wahinetanga. So I don't buy into this narrative of and this colonialized view and this Americanized view of what our tāne represent, because our stories aren't like that, and our stories are full of examples of love and romance and passion and loyalty and sorrow and breaking hearts and forgiveness, and these are the stories that we talk about to each other when we're talking about tānetanga and wahinetanga. So I think it's really important that we bring back Atua Wahine and really focus on the balance that she brings, because through the colonization and the patriarchal line, there's been a whole lot of kōrero that has been chucked out and and missing, and it just does, and this just doesn't make sense. And so that's my understanding. So when I look at men and I look at wahine, I don't look at them in the same way. To me, they're all energy. To me, they're all whānau, and then we're all bouncing along, just trying to do the best we really can. And some ways, you know, we fall over and we screw up, and that's okay. You know, we just pick ourselves up again and we try again. Yeah.
Main, awesome kōrero. Kia ora mai, Rochelle. Nā mihi ki a koe. Me tō koe, anō. Anō. Ai, koina te puna. A kai a koe e kahurangi.
Ooh, Shell, that was main kōrero. Loved it. I've forgotten what I was going to be talking about. Just so engrossed in what your kōrero was. It's a beautiful kaupapa to be listening to. So, so just give me a moment while I try and gather my thoughts back. Yeah, so whakapapa, France 1530. So I'm going to come back to my nan, and just the practices that she did to help. I suppose she wouldn't have known just what had happened way back in the past with her three ancestors, her tupuna queer in France, you know, that they'd become unknown. She wouldn't have known that that had happened with these women of her line. But what she did know was how to feed her whānau, feed her tamariki, and that was all the kai of our atua. So go to Tangaroa, Kai Moana, within Tāne Mauta, the Rongoā of the Ngāere, and Haumia Tiki Tiki, our wild kai, and Rongoā. So this is something that my nan Kahurangi knew intrinsically. It was in her bones, it was in her blood, and she'd fed, nourished and fed her tamariki, my mum and her siblings, all this wonderful, bountiful kai of the time of about the 60s, 70s, probably late 50s. And yeah, and again, touching on the colonisation again and the move of Māori from their rural, their papakainga, into the urban life or mahi, and however that had changed for our people. Their sustenance had changed as well. You know, it was all groceries and supermarket bought, and Nan did her best to maintain that sort of nourishment that was of the whenua for her tamariki. And so one story that's really prevalent for myself is how she'd use the puha a lot in her kai, and just how that was prevalent for her. So I think that was a really telling point for myself, and how Nan was able to stand in her wahinitanga and be able to bring that nourishment for her tamariki. She had, 12 kids, so it's a big whānau. I hope I haven't forgotten anybody, so I might get a slap across the ears later by Mum, but aroha Mum. Kia ora, that's me.
Kia ora mō tō kawaitanga o nā waene o nā māraikura. Nā me iki a koe Kahurangi. Tai atu ki a koe, Kerry.
Kia ora, Kahurangi and Rochelle. Love listening to that kōrero. Thank you for sharing with us. Rongoā for relationships. When I consider that, it makes me think, you know, of our whānau and how our connections are to our tūpuna, our whānau, our whenua, our iwi, our hapu and our marae. And so, thankfully, the connection back to my whānau happened in my early 20s, thanks to the birth of my son. And you know, he was a real blessing to have been able to. Well, he was the source to mend that, the weaving that was done to, you know, bring the family back together. And so we were able to spend time in that space of our culture, and it was very uplifting, and it healed my line. It healed the line of my whānau whakapapa, and I guess that experience has inspired me to be on this journey to be able to help others and awhi others to be able to encourage them to be able to have that difficult conversation, to put all your mamae aside for others, so that that healing can take place. And so I guess when we look at our whānau, and we look at what whānau values do we have, what are your whānau aspirations, and these are some of the things in the kōrero that you could start having with each other about to help weave that mamae back together and to heal it. It takes a little bit of honesty and truth, but that kōrero, the aroha that comes from all of that, it's worth it. It's way worth it, and it enhances our taha wairua, because we can look at doing more things together. The sharing that we didn't have, that we missed out on, it's all shared again, and just connecting with each other to work out how, what can we let go, what do we need to let go, because it doesn't serve us any more purpose to carry it with us any further. It's done. It's how do we leave it behind now? And there was all of that those really, really difficult discussions that had to take place. Half of our whānau spoke to each other and the other half didn't. So there was all those reconnections that took place, and and maybe there is whānau out there that can relate, and and I hope that this is going to be able to start some of those difficult conversations. I guess I really want to just take one day at a time, and we look at how it balances our mauri, and the wonderful thing is that we're fixing that for our tamariki and our mokopuna to follow. So I've got mokopuna now, and so we make sure that they're when they've got a mamae, we acknowledge it and help them with it. And the rongoā that we use, karakia, oi, the aroha, it could be just some kind words or a hug. We like being touched, as Shell said in her kōrero. So I'm just going to leave you with a pātai that I had is what rongoā are you going to practice to enhance the health and well-being of your whānau and your tamariki? And we need to listen to see some of your answers. So kia ora, thank you.
Ka pai, awesome question, Kerry. What rongoā are you going to put into place or to practice? Hey, to bring those connections, those relationships to fruition. Ka pai, Kerry. Ngā mihi ki a koe. Ariana.
Kia ora. Wow, what beautiful kōrero we've had tonight. Such a lovely space to open up and talk. So thank you, Kerry, for your kōrero. I really enjoyed that. Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit, I suppose. Out there, we all know about self-love, and there's a lot of, self tools that we can use to uplift ourselves and to connect and align ourselves, and in order for us to grow. But what does that look like in a relationship? And how do we kind of keep who we are as a person? And how can that function within a relationship to continue to stay true to ourselves? So the question that had come up for me this week was it was around the sacredness of a relationship, and kind of what components does that hold in order for us to then obtain them into our own lives. So yeah, it kind of sat with me, and I was like, oh, sounds like a lot to talk about in a very small amount of time. So I don't have the answers. I'm going to say that right now. But it was a question that had come up. And so if you could just sit with that, like the sacredness of a relationship, what components would that hold for you? For me, it is a space of unconditionalness. Is that a word? Of respect. Respect. I want to be respected. I want to be valued for who I am as a person. No matter what changes I'm going through, as I'm on this crazy life journey of aligning myself to who I'm meant to be here, who I wish and who I want to create to be as a person. And I want to be in a relationship that can honor that can respect that, and that can unconditionally continue to love me for me. And I think if in that space of for me with my husband and I, it's a beautiful space to become who I wish to be, because he respects that. And it's that aroha mai aroha atu, kind of is that relationship that open to receive love and open to give love. And yeah, I just believe if it's something we need to work on. So my rongoā around that comes from self again, and it touches on many of the kōrero tonight that we spoke about, and it's being humble, and it's letting go of this ego that kind of like, it's about me, because at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's about how I can serve others, and how can I be at my best to be able to serve my whānau, my apu and my iwi, and how can I best serve the connections and relationships that I make. And I think for me personally, it starts here in my whare, and having that space to be unconditional. Yeah, so we just need to nurture ourselves and be kind, and we need to feed those relationships that help us grow. So yeah, it's just something to sit with this week. So kia ora.
Wow, you might have noticed, kia ora Kahurangi ko oki mai aia, ngā mihi ki a koe. This is a different energy, this week. And it's because it's hohonu rawa. It's right in here. It's really quite a deep kaupapa. And so thank you all for sharing such personal stories and such personal kōrero. But from that, I mean, maybe that's the learning that I'm hearing from you all, is that, it's in sharing our vulnerabilities that we also get to kind of see the strength in people. And so that's a different kind of a balance, right? In sharing our vulnerabilities, we get to understand people a lot more and in a different context, and we start to see people for who they are. So just really great kōrero whānau, ngā mihi kia koutou katoa. And I was, as you were talking, I've got a big cup this week, but I've made myself a pot of, not a pot, but a pot, a teapot full of kawakawa, dried kawakawa, and tātara moa. And when I spoke previously about kawakawa, you know, we've always got something on us, haven't we, whānau? One of the things I did talk to you about was the story, the whakapapa kōrero. But there's also other elements of the kawakawa that people, as you become more aware of it, that there's other lessons that are taught. And again, you know, there's, like, I've only got here the rau, the leaves, but at the moment, the fruit, kua puawai tēnā kākano, so the fruit have come, the kernels have come out. And I didn't want to harvest any because they're not ready. I don't want to waste them. But they're really kind of green and long at the moment, and they will turn yellowy, orangey to bright orange heading into summer. And so even in this plant, you know, one of the things that Te Awhina taught me was that it's got both male and female properties to it. And so I know my whānau from Tuoi would say even the leaves have got a male and female āuatanga. So the more plumper, rounder ones with a bit of those are the female leaves, those are the female rau. And the pointed ones are the tāne rau. And the same thing goes with the kernels. So the kernels for us, in terms of Te Awhina's teachings, taught us that that's the male part of the plant. And so it has both a tāne and a hine energy. And so when you bring that together, kia kotahi ai. It's a kotahitanga kind of a kōrero. So I just wanted to kind of say that, you know, there's so much knowledge in just one story. There's so much depth to stories. And that we have to kind of understand that there's just not one way to see it. And that, you know, there's always, if we take the time with one another, we actually can work this stuff out. That's how the old people did it. They had wānanga. And they'd wānanga and wānanga and wānanga until it was worked out. That's kind of how they work through relationships. If they couldn't come to some agreement around things, they'd marry you off. So, you know, there was all kinds of other ways to settle an imbalance or a disagreement. And so we're just touching on the surface of some of the deeper kind of work that happens when we're doing this mahi of Rongoā. This is what happens. Someone shares a story with us, and we have to hold it and cherish it and honour it and them. And then the right kind of Rongoā is then applied. And so there's never one way of offering Rongoā. So people might go, oh, but don't you have a wairako for that? Or don't you have a punny you can put on that to fix me up? I just want the quick fix. Well, sometimes that's not what's necessary. So I think about, you know, and I think about why I've paired tātara moa with Kawakawa. And I think because tātara moa is another one of those original rongoā that came to Papa Tuanuku. Now it's the whakapapa I know is that ka moia tāne kia rerenoa, ka puta mai ko tātara moa, ko unga, ko kariao, ko aka. And those are all those entanglements. So that, you know, tātara moa is found on the maunga. And it's bush lawyer is the Pākehā name or the common name. But I love it because it has heaps of entanglements. And you yourself can get entangled in it if you don't know what you're doing. And, you know, that's all about going with the flow of that particular rongoā. Because if you fight against it, it will certainly make itself known to you. And so, you know, it's all about these intimate relationships we have, and the understandings and the depths of the meanings that come back to us. So you're not going to find any of that stuff in a book. And all of this kōrero that's been shared tonight, you're not going to find it in a rongoā book. Because actually you are the rongoā book. You are the book. And so we're just wanting to kind of encourage people to cherish and honour what they know about themselves, and then to cherish and honour the journey of discovering again, or trying to navigate this pathway of relationships, and to just be gentle with yourself and be kind with yourself. And like Ariana said, love yourself. Because all the lessons are going to drop when you give it up and allow it to happen. So I think it's time to bring our guest in. What do you reckon, whānau? Because he's kind of been waiting really patiently for us to kind of have our kōrero. But here he comes. Here's Jerome. Nā mihi ki a koe, e te tūnania, Jerome. Kai te mihi mai oha ki a koe I runga I te ahotanga o tēnei tō mātou nohunga tahi. Engari ka huri tēnei ki a koe, ko wai koe, nōwhia koe, kia whāriki hea. Ki nā tangata e noho ana e whakarongo ana. Ko wai koe.
Oh, kia ora rā whānau. Tuatahi nā mia kia koutou te tokorema nei o Taranaki Maunga. Nei rā te mihi atu kia koutou aku whanaunga. Ko wai tēnei mokopuna, ko ruahine te pai maunga, ko rangi tika I te awa, ko mako kōme ko te kaina tūturu, ko kahungunu te tangata, hona mō kau pūkōrero, tamawhete, haueti, hine manu nā te paki aku hapu. Ko tērā te taho tōku kuia, taho tōku kraua, matakore, rangatahi, no te reo, and mani apoto tērā, and kia ora mai tātou. Thanks so much for having me on. I've just been tuning in and it's been beautiful. There's been a lot of, just the whole thing. So thank you all so much. Oh. And just want to acknowledge the mana o te wahine. That's always a hard one to mess with.
And you don't mess with the Taranaki one. Just saying. Oh, did I say that out loud? Kia ora mai koutou. Okay, so kia ora Jerome. So fantastic you could take this time to come and just sit with us and kind of help us to navigate this space, because I know certainly with regards to the mahi that you do with taonga pūoro, you know, it's just not a local thing. It's a regional, national, international kaupapa that you have embarked upon, I suppose. You've navigated this space for a long time. But I do want you to kind of share with us a little bit of an insight into, you know, what kind of inspired you into this taonga pūoro journey, but also to share maybe a pūrākau, a pūkōrero with us pertaining to some of your whānau pūoro. So kei a koe.
Oh, kia ora, ka pai. I started off in taonga pūoro, sort of growing up around my nan and my koro and being sort of in the wops and the sticks, but between Taihape and sort of Omahu, that's kind of our area. Just been on the farm and that, and I often get asked who was your teacher and that, and I spent heaps of time climbing trees and listening to the manu and trying to sort of mimic their voices. It was sort of like the weird cousin up the tree. But and then I guess I sort of spent a lot of time on the whenua and that was kind of like down on the awa. And that was quite a great sort of education. And we had some kōwauau in our whānau, so that was quite another awesome thing that we were lucky to have those. So they'll sort of come out every now and then. And then I just sort of went through life, and then I got into my early 20s and I got into a bit of strife. I tried to go overseas and I wasn't, couldn't handle the jandal. and then I sort of went into a suicidal space, and I came home, and then my mum and them took me to the awa, and I was lucky to be connected up with like Pahia Turia and Auntie Tari and them, and then they sort of guided me into a pathway of hauora, I guess, and the other person really that helped me a lot was Royce Punga, so, and I know he's just passed recently, so moi maira te papa, and he was a beautiful man who just, I thought he was going to be my counsellor and solve all my problems, but what he did was he would just take me back into the ngahere, and we'd walk in the ngahere and not talk very much actually. And then what he would do was get me to sit with some of the rākau and then just listen. That was his, so back to this kaupapa Rongoā, it's just ata rongo, ata whakarongo. And so I'd sit in there and listen to these beautiful sounds of the ngahere, and that was really quite activating in terms of, remembering about some of the things of my childhood, and also too, I'd seen a book, and I had a book from Matuahirini, Melbourne, and Richard Nunn's another one, some more tūpuna. And so there was a little wharekura book for our kids, and in there had some pictures of taonga pūro and some kōrero around the atuatanga. And that sort of helped me go onto that path where I just locked myself in a little studio in Ohakune, and I would just be making pūro and then doing my best to try and, whakatangira to get some sound from them. And so that was kind of how it all began for me. Once I had enough in my kete, I was a bit more balanced in terms of my hauora. I started to share with all our tamariki going around schools, and just in our sort of rohe, around the maunga and back down, Taumarunui, Wanganui, across back to Taihape and up and all over the place. And so that was the kind of second part of who helped me to learn, was all our tamariki. Because, if you're in front of our kids and you're sharing and you suck, they'll tell you. So that was a big, and I guess that's the one thing or tamariki, sit me in front of the ariki, and then they'll be the judge of whether you're on or not. And and then of course, many of you also have helped in my journey in terms of coming to the realization that these are tools of rongo as well, because they're being sort of termed musical instruments, so that might confuse people, but I guess that's a Eurocentric term, and really what they are tools of rongoā. And I think because actually through Shell and them going up to Porihaka, that's how I got connected with you, Shah, and then you connected me with Ariana, and many other people, Hamaima, and so those are some really also activating, so that's how I've been put into this path, and really lucky to
Beautiful. Even though I've heard the story before, Jerome, I always kind of pick something new up when you talk it through. So I just wanted to kind of say, thank you for sharing the wholeness of your story, because there's not one element that, I can't resonate to and with and relate to and with. And so it kind of, vibes me out, because it gives me hope that one day I might be able to, well, I'm never going to be able to play by like you, but be able to play in my own greatness. And that's that kind of challenge that, through our adversity, we can pick up a taonga, we can pick up something that can support and soothe and heal us. And through healing ourselves, we then, get this opportunity, if there's manu listening or people listening, to also share that gift with others. So that's what that kind of brought to the front of my thinking, Jerome. Thank you for that kōrero pai. I'm going to ask you if you could share with us one, and I tell you, I'm going to tell you what keeps coming up in my mind, and that's this baby is Hene Pūtehui.
Oh,
And
yeah,
I
nice.
wondered whether you could tell us a little bit of the pūrākau around Hene Pūtehui, and then bless us with your gift.
Oh, kia ora. Yeah, Joyce, I was actually thinking about her as well, and what I wanted to add to that was Hene Raukatori and Hene Pūtehui are the two kind of atua that I serve, I guess, or I'm under their korowai, you know. So that's been a beautiful journey as well, and just there's a lot of kōrero that I heard from all of you tonight sort of reaffirmed all that stuff, you know, around that balance, and what Taonga Pūros really taught me about was that balance of ira wahine and ira tāne within myself, you know, and that came through the sound. So yeah, this is Hue Puru Hau, and I think you got that beautiful one that you have. But yeah, the pūrākau around Hene Pūtehui comes about in that creation story as well. And that's really in the sort of just after the separation part. And then there's a lot of whawhai between the tamariki, because obviously some of them didn't want that separation and some did. And so, yeah, and yeah, so during that time, there was that point where I guess the fighting had been done, and where do you go from there, you know? And the pūrākau that I share with the tamariki is that Ranginui was looking down upon Papa Tuanuku and saw the children fighting, and he started to cry these tears of sadness, because to see, you know, imagine seeing that, there would be, I mean, the separation's hard enough, but then you've got that happening too. So you know, kua tangia, and within the teardrop of Ranginui was a seed for the hue. And so that came down and, you know, landed on Papa Tuanuku, and with the wai, the mano te wai, and then the kākano of the hue connecting with Papa Tuanuku outgrew this beautiful hue. And once she had matured in that time, she was able to, so if we look at this hue puruhau, you can see again that, like we were talking about the shapes of the Kawakawa, the wahine shapes, and you see that in the hue as well. And so the amazing thing for me in the pūrākau is what she did was she was able to absorb all that sort of riri and whawhai and that taumaha, the pauritanga, and she took it into her body by exhaling or inhaling that whole āhua, And some say that's why she got that sort of puku, because she's filled up with that. And then she was able to transmute that energy. And then once she was, you know, mo te rongo, what she did was then she started to sing. And those songs that she sang was that transmuting of that energy, and then singing a song of peace. And so I feel like that's a very appropriate one for Taranaki Maunga, you know, because the Rongomau is a big one, and the rohe. So yeah, so she was singing these songs of peace, and her brothers and sisters, they sort of like heard this beautiful tangi of their little sister, and then they were like, oh, and that sort of snapped them out of it, you know, and reminded them, oh, well, maybe we're not here to just be on the rampage, we're actually here to create. And yeah, so she, you know, bringing it back to the kōrero we're here tonight, she brought them back to a state of aroha, I guess. And then, you know, I find it a lot of the time our wahine, that's what they do for us as tāne too, just remind us, hey, you know, bring it back, you know, bring it back. And so that's what Hene Pūtehui did for all of us. And I love that, you know, what is the learnings in the pūrākau is that I feel like Hene Pūtehui, we all have that ability to transmute energy and then to shift it into something that's for the greater good, because we're talking a lot about serving and, you know, for the collective. And so, yeah, that's Hine Pū Te Hue. So this Hue Puru Hau, it actually mimics the sound of the kakapo. And it's the male kakapo makes this booming in the night, in the forest at night. So he makes that kind of yeah, and that beautiful kakapo in mating season, he'll dig a hole in the ground with his big claws. He'll make this beautiful bowl in Papatūānuku, which enables his song to amplify through the ngahere. And yeah, and even that he's making that shape in Papatūānuku, you know, he's really getting back to mum, and he's able to make that booming sound. And then the wahine, the kakapo, they hear that sound, and then they make their way to the song that they're most attracted to, and that's how they partner up. And this one here, it's a real powerful one to use during the haputanga, you know. So, I mean, look at the shape even, eh? Beautiful. And so you can use the hue puru hau during when baby's in the whare tangata, you know, to help calm baby, because it's songs of peace. And the times that I've used it where I've seen it really effective is during the contractions. And I just listen to the mum breathing, and I just mimic her, that rhythm of her breath. So yeah, and so what I love about that too is it's going to give an opportunity back to Shell's kōrero around, you know, her tupuna, gives that mahi for the partner to do, like, you know, because at the times that my children were, when I was younger and my children were born, I was really a bit lost as to what to do. I was sort of like, so I feel for our tāne and for our partners, you know, they can support that and be a part of that and be connected with that whole beautiful taonga, and by playing the hue puru hau. And then, of course, the cool thing is that then once baby's out, you know, you can still continue to play, because it becomes like a waiata pōhiri for baby and for the whole whānau there, to have that kind of soundtrack. And then ka huri te āhua mai te hue puru hau, ki te upu whenua. So then you can, after that's all finished, then you can put the whenua and the pito in those, and they become upu for that part. So, you know, they're just really multifunctional vessels of aroha, eh? But yeah, hine pū te hue is that one.
Hey, I'm just going, wow, that's just so beautiful. Even more than kind of, you know, one was expecting. So I'm positive people that are listening will be going, wow, you know, these are and part of your sharing, Jerome, is that you know, I think sometimes, and you might not be this, but sometimes the mahi that you do, because we all can be kind of in the same space, we kind of become, because it's our norm, we just think, oh well, this is, you know, what we do. And so I want to acknowledge it, because I think again, these aren't things that are found in a book. These are things that you as a practitioner have evolved over time, and as people have invited you into their space. So whether it's offering taonga pūoro when someone's doing a miri or a romi, whether it's through a birthing process like you've just talked about, whether it's to offer, you know, an Oro Ātua session in conjunction with whānau that do yoga, or whānau that are on a hauora kaupapa. You know, you've developed out your practice. So I just kind of wanted to say that people might be saying, oh, how come we don't know about this? Well, you know, again, this is your practice. So I just wanted to kind of mihi to you, Jerome, because yeah, we could spend hours on this. I just kind of know, because we're only at the top, hey, we're only at the surface of the depth of this tradition these kawa and these tikanga around taonga pūoro. So I want to mihi to you for sharing the kōrero. And I'm sure you're going to get hit up. Follow him on Facebook. I don't have your blurb, but follow him on Facebook, Pūoro Jerome. He's on there. If you want to see what he's doing, because I'm sure people have got kind of more questions for you around your practice. Do you mind now if we kind of kahuri ki? Are you willing to kind of share an offering with us right now? Just kind of checking in. Just a small offering, and I want to kind of set it up because for people that haven't had a taonga pūoro session, one with Jerome, but secondly at all, it is, you know, it's about the oro, it's about the vibration of the taonga that he plays. And so for some people you might hugely resonate with that sound and it might take you into another space. So I just kind of want to say to you, just in preparation, that if you do go, Jerome's navigated people before. He's very skilled at this. But just know you got to get back and you got to come back. Okay, so I'm just going to lay that in there now because I'm all good for you being in the moment. But I also want you to take responsibility for yourself. And this is part of our role around safety. This is our health and safety check. Is that you can follow the wairua, but also make sure you come back to your tinana at the end. And Jerome will navigate that, and we'll have Kahurangi at the end to mihi and to finish us up with a karakia. But this is us whānau. So get comfortable, whānau. This is a really good time to also, if you have got headphones, to put headphones on because it actually kind of brings the sound in. But kei te pai, if that's not you, kei te pai. Oh, look at Rochelle. She's really in the moment. She turned the lights off. So go for it, gal. And so for whānau, if you are getting yourself ready, just relax. And if it's too much for you, if it's too intense, if you feel like you can't handle it, come out, go and get a drink of water, go and grab something to eat, and then just come back and wait for us to finish up, okay? So there's lots of things you could do for yourself, but manage self. Ona te rangatiratanga o tēnei momo mahi. So I'm going to hand over to you, Jerome. Nā mihi ki a koe e te tūnane.
Oh, kia ora tui ne. And kia ora whānau. So yeah, we're just going to do a pretty short one anyway, maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And the idea is that you just listen to the oro and sort of absorb that into your whole being. And the best way to do that is we're going to focus on the pito space. So it's beautiful because Kahurangi took us there to start. And so we're going to go back to that pito space. And so you can either put your hands there or otherwise just focus on that area. And yeah, so the oro coming from the pūoro, you know, it does hit our taringa, but actually the best place you can take it into your whole being is through the pito, and that's because that's where we start our whole physical life there, right there. So we're going to focus on that, and I'm just going to get us all to take 4 breaths together. So when I say ka u, then we're going to breathe in through the ihu, and then hold it. And when I say ka ha, then let it out long and slow out your wahai, pera te haumaiangi a tāwhiri. So like a soft summer breeze, just let it out nice and slow. And what I'll do is I'll play some different pūoro, and the idea is we're going to use those, utilize those frequencies of those different pūoro, depending on where they come from. So just so you know, I'm going to be playing the pūtōrino. And so when you hear this sound, then we're going to be taking in the frequency of the rimu tree. Yeah, and that's in e Raukatauri, she's our atua there, but that's from the pūtaiao, that's what we're going to be taking in as the rimu. And then I'm going to play, I'll play my little hue, which is a punga ihu. And it's a hue, and it's going to sound like this. On the top of this hue is also some whale bone from Wairua there that I got given from some of our whānau over there. So there's those two things happening, the tohora and the hue. So when you hear that soft sound, then that's in a pūte hue and the tohora and the hue. Then you'll also hear, I'll use the puru ho, hopefully. Now it's quite a deep sound, so hopefully you've got your earphones on, you can hear that. And one thing I'd like to also use with that one is this other sound, and it's a poi harakeke. And the poi harakeke is good because then we've got that, it's just a gentle sound, but it's bringing in that harakeke. Okay, so there's those two. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just have a look over. Oh yes, that's right. Can't forget this one. We got this beautiful porotu pounamu. So we're bringing in the pounamu, and of course that's the wai. And then we've got all those tokai and those tamariki apapatsuanuku, through that porotu pounamu. So when you hear that sound, and you know that we're bringing in the pounamu. And so those are the things we're going to just go through. And so we'll start off with the 4 breaths together, and then after that I'll start playing. And what you can do to sort of stay grounded and in the moment and in your tinana is really just focusing on breathing and breathing that sound up through your pito. And then I sort of, what I do is I breathe it up, right up through the center of my body, and then up through the pūmotomoto, which is the top part over here. When you're a little baby, you got that soft spot. And then we'll link that up to rangi nui. And then it's going to sort of connect us from papatsuanuku to rangi nui. And then, of course, from rangi nui, we're going back to io. Yeah, so, and me just breathe the sound through. And then, yeah, that's us. Ka pai? I promise I won't talk anymore. So, yeah, that's us. Apart from this breathing bit, so ka in through the nose. Then hold it, focusing on the pito, and then ka ha. When we're just letting it out slow like that. So 3 more. Ka pito, and ka ha. And for these last 2 breaths, I want you just to think about, rewind the time when you were in the whare tangata of your mum, and you were connected from the pito to the raudu, connecting to your mum. And then, of course, your mum went through the same process with your nan, and your nan with your kuikui, your great-grandmother. And so we're going back through that whakapapa, and just breathing to that pito space there, and with yourself and through your whakapapa. So here we go, 2 more breaths and thinking about that. Ka and ka ha. And 1 more big one, and then we're just going to follow the sound. Ka and ka ha. And we'll just take one big breath here, ka u. And ka ha. And another deep breath, ka u. And ka ha. Ka u. Ka ha. Ka u. And ka ha. In this last pūro I'm going to play is this nguru, is the tooth of mother whale. And so for this last part, I'm going to invite you to take yourself to the water. You can go to the moana. And yeah, this nguru comes from the bottom right-hand jaw, the kauwairaro of the tohora mother. And so we refer to her as tohorariki nui. And yeah, and so you can imagine that you're out there swimming with that mother whale and her baby. And perhaps we can imagine that she's gonna be singing to her baby those beautiful love songs that come from our mothers to our babies. So we're gonna sort of bathe in that sound just for this last part. So we'll take another breath and get into that space. Ka u. And ka ha. Yeah, ka pai whānau. So, yeah, we'll just take another 4 breaths together. And again, just focusing on that pito space. So, ka u. And ka. Ka u. Ka. And one more last big breath together. Ka u. And ka. Me too.
So for those of you who may have not had a journey like that before, bring yourself back to your physical state. One of the ways that's really good to do that is to kind of come to the base of your feet and just move your feet around. And also, if you want to do the shoulder shrugs like Kahurangi taught us earlier, just to kind of bring some physical movement to your extremities. And hopefully that was a bit of a journey. So I think when you were playing, Jerome, I'm thinking of the kōrero that was laid earlier in the week in Jamie and Hemi, and Te Poi's kōrero was about pupuki te iiri, pupuki te maara, pupuki te wānanga. And that's certainly what that is. It was about stirring the internal energy, the internal energy that rises up within us. It stirs an emotion, and it also creates an opportunity to have a wānanga. And so whoever you had a wānanga with tonight, how beautiful is that? And so thank you, Jerome. Kare kore, kare kupu kia whakanui te mai o tēnei tō taonga tuku o. Tō taonga tuku o. We're all a bit kind of chilled out, blissed out right now. So, just a big mihi to you, Jerome. I'm going to give you an opportunity to have a final word, and then Kahurangi is going to wrap us up, because this has been a beautiful night with everybody, and I hope you've all enjoyed it. So kei a koe, Jerome, and ka uri ki a koe Kahurangi.
Oh, kia ora, Sha. I just want to mihi to all the whānau out there, all the whānau who are listening and tuning in, and really just to put it back to all of you, our wahine, and all the beautiful kōrero that you shared tonight was, I'm going to be in wānanga on all of your kōrero myself, and just wanted to thank you all. So, yeah, ngā mihi aroha kia koutou.
Ora.
Tēnā koe, Jerome, no tō pūtana tani mai o te taonga kōrero. Kia ai o te ngākau, kia tau te iningaro. Kia koutou o ku suakana, nama I aroha kia koutou. Nō reira, me karikia, unuhia I te rūtaku nui o tāne. Ka wātea kia māma te ngākau te tinana, te wairua I te aratakatu. Koe ara e rongo whakairia he ake ki runga. Tūturu whakamaua kia tīna, huie, tai ki.
Thank you.
Kumari.
Kumari.